Welcome to the Professional Women's Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Peggy Gleason, creator of the Mindful Eating Approach, where I help professional women and business owners with a tailored path to weight loss and self-confidence without the stress of restrictive diets, time-consuming exercise regimes, or medications. I help you transform your eating habits to enhance all areas of your wellness. And we always offer inspiration, motivation, and education with amazing gifts. Today, I am really honored to introduce our next guest, Melissa Deely. Oh my goodness. I just love this woman. She is an integrative mind body health practitioner, an accomplished trainer in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy. And she's passionate about helping you feel and look your very best. Leveraging the precision of functional medicine labs delivered right to your doorstep, she unravels the root causes of health issues and skillfully guides your healing journey. What sets Melissa apart is her authentic and compassionate approach. She listens, collaborates, and empowers, explaining the why behind each step. Now, as a trailblazer, Melissa supports other coaches in their transformative journeys, training them in these powerful modalities. As the host of impactful Don't Wait for Your Wake Up Call podcast, she imparts concise, actionable insights on health and mindset, embodying her dedication to holistic well-being. Melissa is also a co-founder of Girls Matter, a foundation dedicated to keeping girls in school in Uganda and Kenya, breaking the poverty cycle, one girl, one family, one village at a time. Oh my goodness. Welcome, 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 Melissa. I am so thrilled to have you on our show. You just are like a fountain of education and well-being, shining around all over. And I can't wait to find out how did you get, I want to hear your story, basically. I want to know, how did you get to this type of work? Because I know that I love this stuff. This is my favorite.
Well, thank you, Peggy. I'm so honored to be here. And I was in the corporate world for 24 years, and loved that job. And one day, big fish bought little fish, and I was given an hour to clear out my desk, no word of thanks. And in that moment, I knew that I wanted to do something completely different. I saw this as, okay, now I have a chance to have an entirely different second career for the second half of my life. And I knew that it needed to be more of service to the planet and humanity. And I had no idea what it was going to be. However, I was open to being guided. And later that year, I was introduced to a company that specialized in brain health supplementation. And I thought, now this is interesting because I know I use my brain 24/7. However, I didn't know that I could do more to support the health of my brain. And I knew there was near epidemic levels of Alzheimer's and dementia and other neurodegenerative diseases. I'm thinking, what if I could learn about this and bring this to the world and help slow down all of those, diagnoses of these different diseases? And it got me starting thinking about my grandmother, because at the time she was 99 years old, still living at home by herself, caring for herself, fully cognitively functioning. And I knew she was an anomaly. And I also knew that was what I wanted. And something inside me said, are good genes enough? Because I knew I had good genes from my grandmother and that longevity. Yes. But the inside voice said, is that enough? And that got me thinking and comparing her life to my life. And she was born in little old Christchurch, New Zealand, in the bottom quarter of the world back in 1916. And, before World War II and all the chemical toxins that were introduced since then, growing all their own organic food on the property. And I was raised in Tokyo, Japan during the 70s with manufacturing plants spewing out toxins into
Oh,
the
my goodness.
So I thought, I'm way more toxic than my grandmother ever was. So if I want to get on her path, I need to do more for my health in order to ensure that I can. And so I started learning about the brain and detoxing the brain and nutrition for the brain and how to detox my body. And shortly after being introduced to that company and getting on that path, my oldest daughter got a concussion in her first grade 12 soccer game of the season. And she'd already been using this brain health supplement and saying that it had been helping her focus and concentrate in the afternoon at school, which is one of the things it was meant to do. So I was like, great, keep using it. And now she has a concussion. And I'm not working full time. So I start taking her to the physiotherapy appointments and learning for myself and also listening to what they're saying she needs to do on her healing journey. Because I knew she didn't have the cognitive ability to go to the appointment for an hour and then come home and tell me. And I also knew that the healing doesn't happen at the appointment. It happens between the appointments. So I was guiding her healing journey and supporting her. And 2 months later, I was driving to Vancouver and I got a phone call from the high school. Could I please go pick up my younger daughter who had a suspected concussion from grade 8 gym class?
Oh, no. Two of them.
Two of them in 2 months.
Goodness.
One household. And so in that moment, I looked out the windshield across the water at the horizon and said, really? This is how you show me my path? Stop taking out my children. So now I have two very different concussions in the household. Now I'm supporting both of them. And because it's a small town that we live in, a lot of people knew what was going on. And so then just organically, I started having other people reach out saying, oh, my husband just got a concussion. What do I do? Or my son just got a concussion. What do I do? I had businesses reaching out saying, I have this employee coming back to work. How do I support them coming back to work? Because these were all the areas that I was really delving into with my girls and learning about as I was supporting their healing journey. And before long, I was invited to work at a holistic clinic that was opening to support more people with concussions. I mean, this is Whistler, British Columbia. It's downhill skiing in winter and it is downhill biking in summer. There's a lot of concussions.
Yeah, we love concussions. Oh my goodness, yes.
And so I'd learned everything thus far from my own research, my two daughters, and the physiotherapists and other practitioners that I'd been working with. And so I reached out to them and said, am I stepping on any of your toes if I take this approach? And they said, absolutely not. We need more support. And the support you're providing people is really needed. So please go work at that clinic. And then I hit another roadblock. I couldn't get insurance, liability insurance, because I didn't have an education. I didn't have a certification.
Oh my goodness.
That led me to calling a friend who was a life coach. And I'd had life coach in the back of my head when I was first let go, maybe I'll be a life coach, but it never really landed. And I just followed this path along which I was being guided. And now I called him and said, you're a life coach with a successful business. Where did you do your training? I don't want the fly-by-night training. I want training so that I can have legitimate certification and skills to help people. And he just said to me, you don't need to be a life coach. You need to be a health coach. And I went, what? What's that? Never heard the term before.
My goodness.
So that was another download. And I immediately started looking into health coaching trainings. And I started with a cohort literally 10 days later. And from the moment I got there, I knew that I'd found my second career, my new passion, and a way to really offer more to the planet and humanity. Because I realized as I'm, following these courses, I'm in my 40s. Why don't I know this about my body? Oh, that's right. I was busy building a career and raising a family and being a wife and a daughter and a sister, etc., etc. So if I don't know this, how many other people don't know this? And what if I could just bring them all of these little baby steps, things that they can do to make a real difference in their health and in their life that they've never been taught? And so that's where I started down the path of health coaching, and working with clients. And then from there, I'm a curious person. And I just, I believe we're put on this planet to, be of service, find our passion, never stop learning. So the never stop learning is a big part of it. And I've just continued to add tools to my toolbox in working with people as I've seen the need to.
What a story. Wow. I mean, and how did your daughters do?
The key part to let the listeners know, they've both fully recovered, which is wonderful.
Oh my goodness. That's so wonderful. Well, I can relate. I did have a concussion one time. So that's a pretty tough thing to go through. It's a very tough thing because everything is jumbled up.
Mm-hmm. And you don't feel yourself, and yet you look yourself. So nobody else understands what's going on for you and what's happening.
Very true. Very true. My goodness. I was looking at some of the things that I've learned about you. You talk about, well, let's talk about the hypnosis. I'm kind of interested in that. You talk about the power of the unconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And I know our listeners are going to want to understand a little bit more about this topic because it is a very curious topic.
It is. And it's one that I love to talk about because, again, we're not taught through our school system. We're taught really only about our conscious mind in the school system, and we're taught to be in our conscious mind in the school system. So I just want to take a step back first and explain 4 bodies and 3 minds to people so people can understand how this all fits together. So we do actually have 4 bodies with a spiritual body, a mental body, an emotional body, and a physical body. And when it comes to symptoms showing up in our physical body, they've already moved through the other 3 bodies. And so when we address the symptoms in the physical body, I work with the power of the unconscious mind to then go back up into the emotional body, which is housed in the unconscious mind, into the mental body, into the spiritual body, to clear the imbalances there, or the misalignments, or the toxins, as I call them, in order to get to a place of optimal health. We have to address all 4 bodies. Otherwise, a few years down the road, the symptoms just come on back going, hello, you didn't pay attention to what I really wanted you to pay attention to last time.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to get you to pay attention this time. Now, alongside those 4 bodies, we have 3 minds, and that would be our higher self, our unconscious mind, and our conscious mind. Now, our higher self is connected to our spiritual body and can communicate with our unconscious mind. Our unconscious mind, as I said, is connected to the emotional body and can communicate with the higher self and the conscious mind. The conscious mind is connected to the mental body, and it can only communicate with the unconscious mind. It does not have direct access to the higher self. So the unconscious mind becomes a gateway for us. It's also the other 90% of our mind. The conscious mind is 10%, and the unconscious mind is 90%. And people know that the conscious mind is, their logical thinking mind and the problem-solving mind. It's also our goal-setting mind. It's also the home of our willpower. Whereas our unconscious mind is in charge of running our body in terms of it has us breathing every second of every day. It has our heart pumping every second of every day. It has our digestive system functioning every time we eat a meal. And all of these other things going on inside of our body without us giving it a moment's thought because it's entirely unconscious. And it stores all of our memories without any judgment. Every memory of every experience that you've ever had is stored in the unconscious mind, including memories of unresolved emotion. It will actually keep them repressed, though, until such time that it feels it's safe to bring them forth to the conscious mind to address. Which is why military folk in war zones don't get PTSD in the war zone. They're too busy trying to stay alive, right? And the priority of the conscious mind is to keep you alive. So it will repress everything because you can't deal with it in the moment. And then when you get home and the unconscious mind deems you're safe, now it will bring it forth for it to be addressed and resolved. It's also the home of our imagination. And it's our goal getter. So we set the goal in the conscious mind. This is what we want to do. And we put that out to our unconscious mind, to the universe. This is what we want to do. And it's the unconscious mind with the 90%, the much bigger part of our mind that has access to the resources that we need in order to achieve that goal. And those resources are housed in the unconscious mind, in the higher self, because it can communicate with the higher self, right? And you see, the higher self, when we come into this world, our blueprint of perfect health is already laid out for us. And for the life that we're supposed to live is already laid out for us in the higher self. When we can connect with that through our unconscious mind, now we can access all the resources that come with that. We might think of them as downloads, or the aha thought that pops into your head, or intuition tells you something. That's how we capture that information from our higher self into our unconscious self. Everybody's experienced that at some point in their life, but you can choose to access more of it using the tools of the unconscious mind. And one of them is hypnosis.
Oh my goodness. I bet you everyone listening to this is like just in awe, because I'm sure they never heard of it explained that way, right?
Right.
I mean, the 4 bodies, 3 minds. What? Like, what are you talking about? I only have one body, but I love the way
heard of it until I did these trainings. It isn't taught in society.
And as you're talking, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are wondering, talk about, if you can, about dreams, because when we dream, it's almost like we kind of grab some of those other things in the unconscious mind, right?
Absolutely. And so when we are asleep is one of the very common times that our unconscious mind will be sending us messages for us to act upon. And so I do actually encourage people to have a notebook by their bed, because if you're woken up by a dream, you're never going to remember it if you go back to sleep and wake up in the morning. You need to write it down. Even if it's squiggly, scratchy writing in the middle of the night, you need to write it down. And in that moment, you might not know what it means, because the unconscious mind is a little bit like a toddler. It works in symbols and colors and signs and limited language. So it's not going to come to you in the middle of the night and say, now, Peggy, I know you have this goal. These are the next 3 steps you need to take. That's conscious mind stuff. The unconscious mind might just flash you an image in a dream, and it wakes you up. And that image might have some meaning to you from something else that's happened in your life, or prompt a memory, and you go, oh my goodness, that's great. That's exactly what I need to do next. You won't remember it in the morning, though, so you have to write these things down, right? So anything that comes to you in the night is definitely the work of your unconscious mind. And the other time that things often come to us as messages from our unconscious mind is when we're in more of a trance state and we've slowed our conscious mind enough to actually listen and have the awareness. The shower, driving, and sleeping are the top 3. Now, we do spend about 90% of our day in trance anyway. However, we can be in trance and not open and listening, right? Whereas in the shower or driving, we tend to be more open, where we just let our thoughts wander instead of being in our conscious mind thinking all the time.
I've noticed when I'm meditating, when I'm doing a really deep meditation, that's what happens. It's absolutely. Just, I am somewhere, like, I know when I'm in a deep trance with meditation, because I can't feel my hands or my legs or anything. It's just, I'm there. It's very interesting. When you're talking about this, I can relate it to when I do my meditation, and it's fascinating. And then, you have clarity throughout your day. If you meditate often enough, you can have a lot more clarity because of that, I guess, right?
Absolutely. And what I love about it is when I get these downloads, I know I can trust in them, because I know they're coming from my higher self. I know they're in my blueprint.
Yes.
Right. And so, I recently I had, of course, 2 different events I wanted to be part of at the end of October. And I'm like, which one do I go to? And instead of consciously trying to figure that out, I just meditated into that to allow the answer to come to me. And when I allowed it to come to me, it was so obvious. And so I immediately booked the flights to that. It was a integrative health practitioner conference in Florida that happens once a year, or a beautiful spiritual retreat in Toronto. And so both amazing opportunities. I just did a spiritual retreat with this same group of women at the end of June, and it was phenomenal. However, so that's why I couldn't consciously decide, right? And my higher self said the conference in Florida. And then I started to understand all the reasons why, and it made sense. I couldn't have figured that out I would have just been so torn. And instead now I've gone, yep, that makes sense. I'm there, I'm doing this, and I feel really good with that decision because I can trust in that.
Yes.
I was working with a client yesterday, and we were doing some timeline therapy, working with the unconscious mind. And she was feeling a little bit nervous. And I just said to her, do you trust your unconscious mind? Because it will never lead you astray. So do you trust your unconscious mind to release the stuffed down negative emotions that you're ready to release now? And she said, yes. And if she'd said no, though, I would have said, you know that your unconscious mind keeps you breathing all day, right? And digesting and your heart beating. And so if you think about whether you really trust your unconscious mind, you trust it to do all of those things.
Yes.
So do you trust your unconscious mind, right? What we haven't done in society today is we haven't built rapport with our unconscious mind. And that's what all of this work is now teaching, so that we can have that rapport between our conscious and our unconscious mind. And that's where the magic happens. And you're talking about meditation and hypnosis. They both use the theta brainwave state.
Yes.
And really the key difference between the two is with meditation, that is the opportunity to sit and be quiet and bring in the downloads. With hypnosis, we're using it to give suggestions to our unconscious mind of the outcomes we want. So we've decided on the goals, right? And now we might have decided on how we're going to do it, or whatever behavior that's going to be different, because it's all about behavioral change that we want. And then we hypnotize that in. So then the unconscious mind is like, oh, okay, got this. This is what I'm doing now. So that's the difference, because people often ask that question.
I think I'm so glad that you did answer that. That's perfect, because I'm thinking, well, if I answered, I imagine everybody else is going, wait a minute, how does that work? Yes. This is just so fascinating. And I love that you have said you can you can create your own reality every day. Yes. And if you don't like it, you can change it. Yes. Now, I love that quote that you made. And I'm going to repeat it again for the listeners. And hopefully you can articulate on that. You are creating your own reality every day. And if you don't like it, you can change it.
Yes. So this was another, when I did my training in NLP, this was another really mind-blowing learning for me, because I'd never stopped to think about it before. So I'm going to do my best to explain the NLP communication model to people. And in fact, can I share screen?
You sure can. Let me just... And for people who do not know what NLP is, if you could...
It's called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. There we go. I got it.
Did you get it? Okay.
There. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Beautiful. So this is going to explain how we are creating our own reality every single day. And the first thing I want people to know is that our brain is taking in 12 million bits per second of information every single day. And that is way too much for our brain to have to deal with. And so it needs to compress it down to only 128 bits per second. So that is a massive compression of information every single day, right? And we do that through our filters. Now, our filters, you can see in the center there, are how we move through time, space, energy, and matter, our language, our memories, our metaprograms, our decisions, our values and beliefs, and our attitudes. Those categories of filters are the same for every single human being. However, what's housed within those filters are as different as our fingerprints, because no two of us have ever had the identical experience for all of our time on planet Earth. So what happens is we have an external event. Something happens. We go to a concert with 49,999 other people. And based on our unique filters, our mind processes that event and then creates an internal representation in our mind's eye, or a movie screen in our mind's eye. So that when we reflect back on that event, we pull up our own unique internal representation of that event. And that internal representation that we pull up impacts our state, or how we're feeling, which impacts our physiology, as you well know.
Oh, yes.
Our state, or how we're feeling, also impacts our behavior. If we're full of energy, we're much likely to get outside and go for a run or a walk than if we have no energy at all, or we're feeling sad, then we're maybe sitting on the couch binging on Netflix. So what's really fascinating here is whatever's in our
It's interesting.
Go ahead.
No, I just dawned on me. I have heard the statement. I think Tony Robbins is the one that has mentioned it in probably everything he's ever presented. Change your state and change your mind.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's what you're referring to. Oh,
yes. So
awesome.
you can see the arrows go down and the arrows go back up, right? And so what happens is those filters impact that internal representation. So if you have filters that have just developed through life that typically have you be the glass half empty kind of person versus the glass half full kind of person, or the I'm on victim island and everyone else is to blame and woe is me, if those are your filters versus I take responsibility for everything in my life and I'm going out there and making the best of my life, if you're living on victim island versus in solution city, if you're running the horror show filters versus the love story filters, your internal representation will be different. So you can go to a concert with 49,999 other people and have bought a ticket with your best friend who has different filters to you, and you come out of that concert and you've had a completely unique experience, which is what I mean by you are creating your own reality. The stories you tell about that concert are going to be different to your best friends. Have you ever had the experience where you might be at a family reunion?
Interesting. Oh.
And you're talking about an event that happened a few years ago or 10 years ago with another family member who was there, and you're reminiscing on it. And you're talking about it, and they're like, no, that's not what happened. And they tell their version. And you're like, no, that's not what happened. And you each think you're losing your mind.
Oh, you are hitting the nail on the head, because I have had that happen mostly with one of my closest friends. Every time we talk, she's recalling something that I don't think is correct, me. But I don't usually say anything. I just sort of listen, because that's what reality was for her, right?
Exactly.
But it always makes me think, does she have a memory problem? Because it doesn't make sense that it could be so different, right?
Yeah, she does not have a memory problem, or probably not. Her filters are just very different to yours. So her experience and her memory of that experience is then very different to yours. And so you're right. Each of you is sharing your own reality, your own truth, and they don't align because your filters aren't aligned. And that's all it is. And so it's really fascinating to understand this. Like it literally was
Oh
like,
my
when I learned this, it
gosh.
was like poof coming out of my head going, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's what I mean, I love that. Well, we have talked before, and this is my favorite topic. I'm always fascinated with it, with the NLP, with the hypnosis, and that whole brain health category is just something everybody needs to know more about. Which leads me to ask you, um, what are some of the things you can offer the audience? And perhaps maybe I think you have something you want to give them. And then I want to ask you to share with them how can they get to know your work better and get in touch with you? Because I think, honestly, I will say truly, I think everybody listening should really check Melissa out and her work because it is phenomenal.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Peggy. And I, in terms of wisdom for the audience, I just would love to share that no matter where you're at in your life right now, everything until this point has happened for you, and it will continue to happen for you because you needed to learn the lessons you needed from those experiences in order to get where you're at today. And I know when you're in the ick, it doesn't feel good. And you think it's happening to you, and you may be wondering, what am I supposed to learn here? However, when you learn those lessons and move through it, that's how you keep going on your path of life. And there may be times where you move through things without learning the lessons. And that's where you have toxic talk in your head, toxic emotions in your body. And we can use these tools to release that. And it's incredibly graceful, lasting transformation. And the beautiful part about it is you don't even have to talk about it. You don't have to talk about the trauma or that horrible incident and re-trigger yourself because I don't need to know. I'm the guide. Your unconscious mind is the coach, and your unconscious mind already knows what happened. So all I help you do is get the learnings from that experience so you can release the stuffed down emotion or mental toxicity related to it so that you can then move through it. And we go to the root. We don't find out what happened last week or last month or last year. We go back to the first time you had that negative emotion of anger or sadness or fear or hurt or guilt or rage. And then that, like when you pull a weed out of the garden, it pulls everything. When we pull the root, it literally pulls everything between then and now and releases it all. And it's not that you'll never feel emotion again. We want you to feel emotion, and we want you also to be able to process it in the moment, get your learnings, and keep moving forward and not stuff it down. So that's the power of timeline therapy. And when we use that, we start to change the filters. And then guess what? Life is different for you because you have new internal representations coming up for your experiences. So I just love sharing this with people because you're right, Peggy. If the whole world could know this, we would live in a different world. And this is new. This was only developed this century, right? NLP started in the late 70s and into the 80s. Timeline therapy was only this century. Hypnotherapy's been around since the beginning of time.
Sure.
All of them together is beautiful. And in terms of people getting hold of me, my website is yourguidedhealthjourney.com. And I have training programs on the website people can look at. I work with people one-to-one. The training programs are great for people as well because even if you don't really care about becoming certified as a coach, this work is for self first for everyone. And then you get to join a community of people where from then on you can trade with other practitioners so that you don't have to keep paying for session after session after session. You just reach out to other practitioners in the group and go, I want to do a timeline therapy swap today. And you figure that out with one of the other.
Isn't that delightful?
So
Oh my goodness.
That's how we're spreading this work, is just encouraging people to come and learn how to do it so that you can do it for self and you can do it for others, even if you never build a business out of this. And then my gift for the audience
is terrific. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait till this is out there.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. And my gift for the audience, I can't remember which one I offered you there, because we're spending so much time talking about the unconscious mind.
And I don't see it, I don't have it written down, but
Okay,
I will tell everybody, everything's going to be in the show notes. But
perfect.
you're going to get a gift from Melissa that I know you're going to love because
Well,
anything she
I'll
does is
explain
awesome.
it if you like.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
called Daily Suggestions for Your Unconscious Mind. So it's a virtual card deck, and you download it to your phone, and it will just be scrolling. And what you do is you take a screenshot, and that's how you pick your card. And then it will stop, and that will give you your daily suggestion for the day. And that's what you work with throughout the day. Read it to yourself first thing in the morning, at your breaks, and think about how you can bring that into your day. Meditate on it if you're somebody that meditates. And there's 30 different ones. So you can have a different one every day of the month or enough to get you through the month. Sometimes you might get one twice, and that's okay because that's a message that one you need to do extra work on, right?
Oh, that's so cool.
And this is how we start to shift the thoughts, the toxicity in our mental body by focusing on these daily suggestions that start having you talk to yourself in a way that you talk to someone you love versus how you might typically talk to yourself.
This is so so generous. Everybody's going to love this. I know I'm going to love it. Well, I want to thank you so much because this has been such a joy. And I have to mention, the lighting in here went a little wacky, and I look like I'm in a dark hole or a closet because the storm outside is changing everything. So I just want you to know, I'm not in a closet. But I want to thank you and the audience for listening because this is pure gold, and I'm really filled with gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you for having me and helping get the word out about these modalities and helping more people heal. Appreciate
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for listening and supporting the Professional Women's Wellness Podcast. If you would like to attend training sessions by our amazing podcast guests and have a chance to connect, join the Professional Women's Wellness newsletter. For more details and to sign up, scan the QR code or click the link in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. Each week, we will select a reviewer who will receive free access to my $197 course, Goodbye Night Bites, a 30-day journey to stop emotional eating at night. Please subscribe to get notifications of future episodes.